So hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new YouTube Q&A. Now during the week I did say that I would answer every single question, and despite some questions being quite suspect, I'm going to stay true to my promise and get through every single one. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Question number 1 is from Tom, and Tom wants to know, what is the most stubborn body part to grow? Now Tom, I'm not sure if you're referring to body parts that I struggle to grow, or as a general rule of thumb, what body parts tend to be the most prone to stubbornness across the general population. Now for me, my calves are definitely my worst body part. They're the most resistant to growth, not so much because there's something objectively to do with the calves that are stopping them from growing, but rather that I'm piss poor at actually consistently training them. If I was to prioritize them and train them 2 or 3 times a week consistently, progressively overload, get stronger on them, I would hazard a guess that I would improve the appearance of them. But the reason that they look pretty paltry on my physique is a combination of my limbs being quite long, but also the fact that the rest of the muscles on my body, by and large, are very, very well developed. The rest of my muscles are so huge that it makes my calves look small. Sometimes I do wish that I was obese as a kid, because as far as I've been alive, I have never seen a single obese person who has had small calves. So if you are someone who's obese and you're struggling for motivation to stick to a fat loss plan, just think about how fucking aesthetic those calves are gonna look once you finish your transformation. Second question is from Philip, and Philip wants to know, post hair transplant, how did I find the itchiness? So if I'm being honest with you, Philip, I don't recall struggling with itchiness all that much. There may have been 1 or 2 occasions in the immediate days after the transplant, but anytime it was itchy, if I remember correctly, I just simply ran or trickled water over the scabs. So the last thing you obviously want to be doing, having gone through the effort of going to presumably Turkey, having spent your 3 grand best case, 12 grand worst case to get a new lid, is to start scratching chunks out of your head. Deal with the pain, the discomfort of it, Philip. It won't last any longer than really the immediate days after your transplant. And in a year's time, my man, very, very excited for the result that you're going to get. It's, to this day, one of the best decisions that I've ever made. Oisin Cadden has caught me a beaut here, and he said, the reel about the ice cream bulking shake, where's it gone? So Oisin, you're very quick, right? Because I deleted that reel within 30 minutes. And I was sat here thinking of an elaborate excuse that was going to paint me in a better light as to why I deleted the reel I posted of the ice cream bulking shake. You will find on TikTok, it is still there. On Instagram, I deleted the shit out of that because it got 31 likes in about 31 minutes. And you know, some may say that's narcissistic of me. I completely agree with you. But let's just say the Gymshark contract would have been null and void had they seen that piss poor performance of a reel. Fourth question is from Connor, and Connor asks, will there be a diet only plan? So on the app, you have a workout only plan. So if you're someone who doesn't quite need a diet plan, but just wants to follow a regimented, structured training program that is guaranteed to pack kilos of muscle onto your frame, you can go for that at a more cost-effective price. The second option is the meal and workout plan combination. A little bit of a higher price point, but also gives you the support that you need with your nutrition, gives you a meal plan that's changed every single month to achieve your goal, whether that be muscle growth or whether that be fat loss. The highest tier available on the app is basically one-to-one coaching minus the check-ins. So what you will get is live chat support from me on top of the meal and workout program, as well as the meal and training programming amongst the other various benefits that come with the app. Because you're getting direct one-to-one access to me, to my chat box, that's the reason for the higher price point. Probably not going to be suited to most people. Speaking objectively, most people tend to opt for the meal and workout plan combination. But if you're someone who just needs the training plan, well then the training plan option will be suited for you. If you're someone who needs that little bit of direct support, well then potentially the higher ticket option will be the best suited for you. In terms of will there be a diet plan one only coming? Right now there won't be. I don't want to put too many things on the app, because if you're coming to a website and you're looking for 4 or 5 or 6 different things, you're probably going to end up not getting anything. But if I do add a diet only option, which isn't beyond the realm of possibility, you'll be the first one to know. What is my height and my weight? I am 6'3", which I think is somewhere in and around 191 centimeters. And I currently weigh a little bit heavier than I would be usually. I'm about 105/106 kg. So I'm in the middle of a bulk right now, hence why my body weight is a little bit higher. I'm not too sure whether I'm going to continue bulking or I'm going to do a cut very soon. Small Sean has booked me in to compete in a High Rocks on the 20th of February in Poland. And for that, I'm going to have to shed a few kgs. Otherwise, I'll be keeled over holding my lower back throughout the entire event. I am also in the works of setting up some collaborations over stateside. And if I am going to be present in front of a new audience, I'd probably like to be presenting my best physical composition. So we shall see. I do enjoy the bulk. I do enjoy the feeling of fullness, of outgrowing my t-shirts, having the biceps bulging inside in the gym. But ultimately, it's not my most aesthetically impressive appearance. For that, I'm going to have to lose a couple of kg. But we shall see. How and why do I balance CrossFit with bodybuilding, if at all? I manage CrossFit with bodybuilding badly, if that makes sense. A couple of weeks back, I was hitting CrossFit quite consistently twice per week. More recently, I've not been to CrossFit in a couple of weeks. I did my first session back last week. I'll be going to a session tomorrow morning. I usually kind of do the endurance sessions if I am doing a CrossFit session at all. Quite simply because when I'm in the gym and I'm focusing on the weights, I like to be able to do what I like to do. I like to train in a bodybuilding style, and most CrossFit gyms just don't cater for that level of bodybuilding focus. CrossFit for me is by far the most interesting way of keeping my fitness up and indeed getting fitter. You got to think about the community aspect of being in a CrossFit gym, going into a class with 30 odd people, having the chats with people at 6:30 in the morning, having other people there competing with you, pushing you on. So for me, it's a lot more appealing than simply just jogging 5 kilometers on a treadmill. In terms of how do I balance it, I suppose the easiest way to balance it is to focus on what your priority is at this point in time. If it's CrossFit, well then CrossFit will occupy a greater percentages of the sessions that you complete on a weekly basis. But if bodybuilding is your focus, well then on the flip side, bodybuilding will take up the majority percentage of the sessions that you complete on a weekly basis. So it's going to be very, very difficult to do like 3 bodybuilding sessions, 3 CrossFit sessions, and really perform optimally in both. Whereas what is very possible is if you're in the gym 4 or 5 times a week and you're doing kind of 1, max 2 CrossFit sessions per week as well. So it's a lot more reasonable, I think, to manage. Jack asks, am I still boxing, and how do I find doing this alongside lifting? So I haven't done a boxing class in a couple of weeks. And again, similar to CrossFit, you do need to be conscious of your boxing sessions versus your weight sessions, because particularly for boxing, particularly for your push muscles, so like your chest, your shoulders, your triceps, boxing can fatigue those quite a bit. That in turn can reduce the productivity or the efficiency of the weight sessions that you do. You need to be smart with your programming, whether it's CrossFit that you're trying to balance, whether it's another sport, whether it's boxing, and mixing that with weightlifting. You're not going to be able to maintain the ideal bodybuilding schedule, but also do as many boxing sessions and CrossFit sessions as you like in a week, because your body can ultimately only recover from so much, and you only have so much energy stores, let's say on average in a weekly basis, that you can tap into. If you're trying to mash both together and focus on both equally, you're essentially going to be burning the candle at both ends, and what's going to happen is you'll perform suboptimally in not one of those things, but both of those things. If boxing is your main focus, well then maybe you're boxing 3 or 4 times a week and you're hitting the gym 1, 2, max 3 times a week. But if bodybuilding and building muscle and strength is your main focus, well then maybe do that 4 or 5 times a week and box once or twice per week. Aaron has a very simple question. It's Papa ? Thanks, Aaron. Another Aaron has asked, can I get a workout only plan suited to home workouts? This is the beautiful thing about the Fitness app as well, is that if you are working out from home, you can get a workout plan catered towards that. Now, I'm not going to sit here and bullshit you and say that doing press-ups and sit-ups and bodyweight squats from your sitting room is going to equate to the same result as you would get doing weighted variations or machines inside in the gym. It's absolutely not. What I would recommend is that if you're following a workout program, that you get yourself a bare minimum amount of equipment. That may be something as simple as a set of dumbbells. It might even extend to, if you're in a financial position to do so, to buy yourself a squat rack, a barbell, potentially one of those shitty leg extension / leg curl machines. Whatever you can do to access a greater variety of exercises or increase your capacity to weight certain exercises is going to be beneficial. You'll be able to get a plan catered towards that on the Fitness app, but really and truly, between me and you, if you want the best possible result, whatever you can do to increase the scope through which you can add weight, add resistance to an exercise, the better the result you're going to get. So Wyndham asks, am I straight, gay, questioning, or bi? In the end, you're still incredibly sexy. Thank you, Wyndham. Really appreciate it. Whether it's a compliment that comes from a man, a woman, or someone who doesn't know, a compliment is indeed a compliment. I'm very much straight, which will be a relief to my girlfriend. I know a lot of gay men across the country, and indeed probably across the world, are sighing in disappointment right now. But hey, It is what it is. So when did I start my fitness journey? So my weights journey and my bodybuilding journey started very close to 10 years ago, but my fitness journey started much earlier than that. The roots of my fitness journey started after playing an absolute belter of a hurling match from full forward with my local club Monaleen, in which I scored 2 goals, one of which was scored with the boot. I was over the moon, I was ecstatic, but my hurling coach at the time, Coleman, who I hold very, very dearly in my heart to this day, he decided to use that as the perfect opportunity to deliver me a little bit of tough love. And what Coleman did was he held me back after the session. He gently placed his hand on my belly and he says, "Sean, I think it's time we got rid of the bread basket." I didn't even know what a bread basket was, but judging by Coleman's hand placement, I hazarded a guess. And from that day, I shit you not, I made it my mission to go on a 5K, if not a 10K run, every second day. Did not know what I was doing, did not know how fat loss occurred, just assumed that if you eat good and you exercise a lot, that you will lose fat. And that's exactly what I did. I lived off pretty much fruit and whole grains, and I aimed to get fitter and run my 5Ks faster and faster every second day. A couple of months later, I met Coleman out on one of my runs, and I was delighted to tell him that I had lost a full stone. This was back in junior cert, so I was about 14 or 15 at the time. I initially lost a lot of weight to begin with, and from there I was pretty skinny, so the next logical progression was to get into the gym and start building some muscle. And Bob is indeed your uncle and Mary your aunt. Am I natural? I am indeed natural. Is my hairline natural? Absolutely not. How long have I been training? As discussed, I've been training in the gym for about 9.75 years, so very close to 10 years. It's actually provoked a very unique memory. My first experience with weight training wasn't actually in the gym. What I used to do down in Kilkee, we used to have a house down there that we went down to every summer, but I started drinking raw eggs. I also started doing push-ups in the kitchen when I should have been mingling with friends my age, doing what teenagers do. I was at home putting paint buckets in a gear bag and squatting them. And I think I only put them in a gear bag because I tried to hang a paint bucket off one end of a broomstick and a paint bucket off the other end of a broomstick, but the physics of the situation weren't quite working out. So I put them in a gear bag, threw them up on my back, and was doing sets of like 50 squats. So that was my first introduction to weight training, as it were. But then going into transition years, so at about 15, 16, I started going to the gym every so often and eventually took it more seriously after our first junior cup, which for those of you who don't know is like school's rugby essentially. After we got knocked out of the junior cup, I was unhappy being at like 70 kg. And then I think over that summer, the following summer, I put on something like 8, 10, potentially even more kg. Genuinely curious, what made you interested in creating content? My first memory of content creation is actually very vivid. I remember my sister initially, Siobhan, used to always encourage me to start taking videos of myself lifting weights inside the gym from very, very early on. Of course, I was too embarrassed to do this. I thought only narcissists record themselves in the gym, and maybe they do, me being one of them. But I never did, and it's something that I very much regret to this day. So I only really started recording myself in the gym probably about 4 years into my lifting journey. And the reason for me creating content or starting to create content is because I knew that after 4 years of confirmation bias that I was pretty good at this weightlifting thing, and in comparison to people my age, I was certainly head and shoulders above anyone else in terms of my physical progression. I was strong as fuck. I had a lot of muscle. I think I built pretty much most of the muscle that I have now in the first 4 or 5 years of lifting. And really and truly, I've never wanted to work for someone else. And I learned this on a building site when I was 18 on my very first job. I was just one of those people who hated being told what to do. Anytime someone would tell me what to do, even if it was a perfectly legitimate request, I would do it, but I would resent the fact that I had to do it. So from that point, I determined I was not going to function well if I had to work for someone else. And at that time, 19 or 20, when I started posting content online, I started thinking, what am I good at and how can I lean into what I'm good at? So I knew I was good at weightlifting, I knew I was good at building muscle. So I said the next logical progression, if I want to make a career out of this, is to take advantage of the online boom, as it were, back in 2017, and try to create a name for myself in the social media space as a fitness content creator. I distinctly remember my very first post was about muscle memory, the caption of which was stolen directly from Wikipedia. I did not know what the fuck I was talking about, but I put it in there, and that got the ball rolling. And pretty much from that point, for the last 6 years, I've shown up every single day to post something on social media. And ultimately, it's the consistency of the last 6 years that has me in the position that I'm in now. It wasn't that any of the posts that I've ever done have been particularly special or gone particularly viral. It has just been the fact that I'm like a cockroach. You know, nuclear bomb hits the town, everyone's dead, everything is dead, except for the fucking cockroaches that crawl out from the wreckage. So that has been me, and that has been my story over the last 6 years. It's why I'm very, very grateful to be in a position getting the opportunities such as with Gymshark, being able to coach hundreds of people at a time online, and ultimately be able to reach thousands and thousands of people every single day. So it's something that is never lost on me, something I'm always grateful for, but I also appreciate the work that I have put in, the stubbornness that I have had to keep showing up in good weeks and bad weeks to do the things that I needed to do to achieve my ultimate goal. Content creation specifically wasn't really of interest to me, but I saw it as a vehicle to being able to work for myself and being able to work in an industry that I knew I was going to be able to offer the most value in. Bench press versus chest press. So I assume you mean barbell bench press versus a machine chest press. Really and truly, I do both. I think if you're arguing the nuances of which is going to develop your chest the best, I think it's a pretty pointless argument. And indeed, there is no exercise that you have to do, that you must do, that is objectively more optimal than the next exercise. Because at the end of the day, anything that requires you to push your hands from this position to that position, whether that's a barbell bench press, a dumbbell bench press, a machine bench press, is going to be doing the same job. It's going to be stimulating the same muscles. Your muscles don't know specifically what exercises they're doing. They respond to the stresses that's placed upon them. So place enough of a stress that is close enough to your muscles' capacity that forces it to adapt, to recover, to get stronger, so the next time you put that same stress on it, it's going to be better equipped and better able to handle it. Whether that stimulus is achieved with a machine chest press, a barbell bench press, or a dumbbell bench press, it really does not matter. Make your life as easy as possible. Getting caught up in the nuances of the arguments of which exercise is better for what is making your life more complicated. Fene, forgive me if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, what's the best sources to go to do my own research for fitness related topics? So Fene, I'll give you a couple of resources. People that I learned an awful lot from. He may be quite technical and quite academic, but Danny Lennon, Sigma Nutrition, was a podcast that I literally absorbed years and years and years ago. So I learned an awful lot about nutrition, what the important things and factors to do with nutrition were from that. There's a lot of technical information on that podcast, a lot of which may not be relevant for someone who's just looking to enhance their knowledge of bodybuilding and nutrition, but certainly he's an absolute wealth of knowledge and information. Dr. Mike Israel is another person that you're not going to go far wrong if you follow and you absorb pretty much everything that he says. Followed him for a very, very long time. Used to look up podcasts that Dr. Mike Israel was a guest of, many of which is in fact, and this ties into the next person, is Revive Stronger. So Revive Stronger podcast is another phenomenal, really, really informative and educational podcast that if you listen to and if you apply the principles that they discuss, you're going to do very, very well in terms of building your physical composition. On that note, I think Dr. Mike has a YouTube channel called Renaissance Periodization, in which he breaks down the most relevant topics that are needed to know that pertain to bodybuilding. If you just literally sit down one day and absorb that YouTube channel, I'm sure you're going to learn a hell of a lot. What's the best gym bag out there? I really don't know. My sister got me a gym bag years ago for Christmas with my initials SF on them, which funnily enough happened to be her initials as well. So I wonder, was it just a gift that was reshared? Alan asks, where did I get the hair done? He's thinking of doing the same. I'm gone beyond the point of saying, oh, well, if you feel as though it's necessary for you, get a hair transplant, to the point of get a fucking hair transplant if you're even remotely thinking about it. I cannot explain to you the mental liberty and freedom that I've had knowing that I have a solid head of hair on my shoulders. And some may call that narcissistic, some may call that vain, and you may very well be right. But for me, I was always conscious of how my hair looked on a given situation, particularly on a windy day when I knew that my hairline was going to be exposed for all to see. It really just was not a nice place to be. And ever since I've got my hair sorted out, it's literally the last thing on my mind. I can't even remember the last time I wore a hat. And if you said that to me a year ago when I needed a hat anytime I would go outside, I think I would have struggled to believe you. What you will get, Alan, is a lot of people who don't struggle with hair loss telling you that you should just accept and love the head of hair that you have on your shoulders right now. But ultimately, they don't have to deal with the mental aspect of the things that you need to deal with. And I think there's a few things cosmetically that some men may like to address, one of which would be a hair transplant. The other is probably teeth. Aside from that, there's probably not much else, but we don't ask for a lot. And indeed, if women can go and get Botox, lip filler, boob jobs, fucking butt jobs or whatever, I think it's not a whole lot to ask that a dude goes and gets his hair done. I consider a hair transplant to be very similar to the thought process behind getting braces. Some may say you could just embrace the crooked yellow teeth that you have in your mouth, but objectively, getting your teeth done, if they look like a pile of shit, is going to objectively make improvements to your visual appearance, which in turn will have knock-on effects on your confidence. Daniel asks, where's my podcast gone? I'm getting fucking called out on this YouTube Q&A. My podcast, I haven't recorded an episode, I think, since September 2022. The last episode is there. It's still there. It's on the Correct Opinion podcast on YouTube. So I did one with Siobhan O'Hagan, I think was the last one. I haven't done one. I don't have any legit excuse as to why I haven't done one. I just have been piss poor with planning and time and the effort gone into getting guests and driving up to Dublin to the studios, albeit I think Primal Pro Studios or something up there. He does a phenomenal job in terms of making your life as easy as possible, from the setup to recording the podcast itself and editing it so you don't even have to touch it afterwards. I've no excuse. Maybe I should get back into it. I will say, in my defense, social media is a fucking lot, from Instagram to TikTok to keeping YouTube. Like, there's a lot of housekeeping involved, and then you're showing a podcast on top of that as well. I am only one man. Maybe I should improve and take on a lot more challenges, and maybe if I did engage in that, it would bear better fruits, but right now, not a priority for me. I do feel as though it's something I should get back into, so thank you for calling me out. Shane asks, do I possess a peen or a vagine? For those of you who don't know, he's referring to a penis or a vagina. The last time I checked, it was a peen that I possessed. My back and chest have grown a lot, but your arms, especially biceps, are puny. I'm skinny fat too. Tips.
It's not looking good, bruv.
Your arms are puny. So chest and back growing a lot is good, right? You have a big chest, if you have a big back, it's gonna be hard not to have an impressive physique. So if your arms aren't quite coming up alongside that, to me, it would strike me as a solely volume problem. So obviously if you're getting your chest to grow, your back to grow, your intensity probably is where it needs to be. Exercise selection is probably good. Volume for those muscle groups is probably good. But a lot of people do treat their biceps and their arms as an afterthought. And this is why I'm a big proponent of adding in 1 to 2 solely arm days per week. So biceps and triceps, nothing else. Do 3 or 4 exercises for triceps, 2 or 3 exercises for biceps, especially if they're a lagging body part, and repeat that once or twice per week. When you think of most people who train arms, they do it after chest or they do it after back. Most of the time they're already tapped out of the session mentally. They don't want to be there. They're just looking forward to going home. They kind of go through the motions. They stop the sets well short of failure. Maybe they even cut the amount of sets that they do by 1 or 2 because sure, you got a decent stimulus on your chest or your back anyway, and then they wonder why their arms aren't growing. Put them first in a session, put them fresh, give them their own days so that you bring the same intensity to your triceps and biceps that you bring to your chest and your back. If you're skinny fat, the best prescription for 99% of people is going to be cutting, because if you're skinny fat, you're implying that you've got fat on your physique that you need to lose. I do think in most cases it's naive to assume that you're going to build so much muscle so quickly that it's going to compensate for the fat that you currently have. And in most cases, 90% of the clients who sign up to me have a fat loss phase to undergo before I'm comfortable committing them to a bulk. So extrapolating that same logic, I would assume that if you're describing yourself as skinny fat, you probably have a little bit of fat that you can lose first. Where people fall down with deciding whether they should cut or whether they should bulk is assuming that only one is possible at any one time. The vast majority of my clients experience rapid strength gains and as a consequence, decent muscle growth while they're in the process of losing fat. You could be a beginner but have 5 or 6 years experience in the gym. I would define a beginner as someone who is new to implementing and properly and consistently implementing the principles of nutrition and training, progressive overload and muscle growth in general. A lot of people have been in the gym for 5 years but have been following a shit program, have not been training with intensity, barely eat any protein, don't prioritize their nutrition, don't prioritize their sleep. So despite the time that they put down in the gym, I would still consider them to be in their infant stage of their lifting and of their fitness journey. So as a result, you are still primed to build muscle, to build strength, while also losing a considerable amount of fat. And it's only really when you get really lean, when you've got chiseled, pretty defined and sculpted abs, that you'll start to notice strength start to drop off, start to plateau, and you really struggle to get those extra percents in the weights room. Are the training plans adaptable to new needs as progress is made? So absolutely, but the biggest thing that's going to need to change as you progress is likely going to be your calorie intake. In terms of training, if you can bring the same intensity, do the same exercises, but continue to get stronger and progress with those said exercises, you're still going to be very, very successful over a prolonged period of time, weeks, months, and years, in terms of building obviously strength, but also as a byproduct building muscle. As it pertains to your training plan, in terms of extra volume, only unless you're looking to prioritize different muscle groups would you be looking to really add extra volume. But if you have a training plan in which you're getting stronger, in which you're building muscle right now, that ultimately is the formula and the recipe that you need to continue building muscle and strength into the future. For me, over 10 years, the training program that I follow now is not much different to the training program that I followed 5 years ago. I continue to show up, push myself to my limits, aim for incremental progression, either an extra rep here and there, an extra kilo here and there. And as I get stronger, I continue to add muscle to my frame. And the same logic goes for you. So in terms of your training needs, unless you've got a change of schedule, you've got a change of goal, so you want to move from the muscle game plan to solely the strength game plan, there's not going to be a massive need for adjustments to be made to the training program. As it pertains to your calories, because you become a bigger, stronger person, your calorie goals will likely need to be tapered up over time. And for that, that is what the check-in feature in the app is for. So you check in every 4 weeks, give us an update of your progress, give us an update of your current body weight, and as a byproduct of that, your calories will be adjusted. How to gain muscle as a 6'3", 70 kilo, 15-year-old. I'm gonna put myself in your shoes and what my goal was when I was 15 years old inside the gym. I didn't get caught up with the fact that I wanted 10 kilos of muscle. I showed up to the gym every single time, knowing what I performed in the last session and doing whatever the fuck I could to slightly progress in the next one. So if I was benching 70 kilos, for example, for 5 reps in one session, the next session I was aiming to hit 70 kilos for 6 reps. And then that would just compound and continue for weeks, months, and years, that I found myself in a situation where I woke up one morning and I had fucking 20-inch biceps. Alongside that, nutrition is obviously important. You just want to be eating to a point that your body weight is slowly but surely tapering up over time. So if you're eating an amount of food right now, your body weight is staying fairly consistent, it's not changing, that indicates to me that you are at maintenance calories. So what you need to do is aim for an objective increase, albeit just slightly, from the amount of calories that you're consistently consuming right now. Add in an extra 100 calories of fucking meat at dinner time, an extra couple of 100 calories of pasta or porridge in the morning time, add in an extra meal, add in a couple of extra snacks until you get to a point where you're going from 70 kg to potentially 2, 3, or 4 weeks later, you're 70, 70.5 or 71 kg. How lean do you need to get before you should bulk? So essentially you should be lean enough that if I was to wave a magic wand and add 5 to 10% of body fat to your frame, that you would still be able to sustain the bulk. 10% may be a little bit extreme. For most people, I think there should be the outline of abs at a bare minimum. This is applying to dudes, by the way. And I think there just needs to be a lack of like excess overhanging sort of body fat. So it will slightly differ person to person based off of how much body fat that you're willing to tolerate on your physique. But the best results will usually come from people who get themselves lean enough that kind of the love handles are gone, the waistline is pretty much shrunken in, and that they have at least a bare outline of abs. How to build consistency. So consistency, Cal, is all about habits. And habits are only built through the implementation of a certain routine. For example, I've wanted to get into the habit over the last number of weeks of getting to the gym in the morning time. So basically there was no other way for me to build that habit than having a conversation with myself, understanding what I wanted to achieve, reminding myself of that every single day, and then doing the action consistently enough that it was going to build that same habit. So what that meant for me is that as soon as my alarm went off at 5:45 every morning, that I hopped out of the bed. As soon as I was out of that bed, well then the next logical progression is to get my gear on and go to the gym. There is no easy way of doing it. Aside from having that conversation with yourself, what is it that I ultimately want to achieve? Why is it that I want to achieve it? And then from there, you think about how am I going to achieve it? Consistency is very much interlinked with confidence. You become consistent with something when you build your confidence in your ability to do something. So for me, I've been going to the gym pretty much every single week for the last 10 years. At this point in time, I'm consistent because I'm confident in my ability to continue going to the gym for the next number of years. And on that note, I think confidence is built through keeping promises to yourself. If you're someone who outlines a handful of things that you want to complete on a daily basis, but you're only completing 1 or 2 of those things, you essentially are someone who breaks promises to yourself So the next time that you go to set a goal or say that you want to do something, in the back of your mind is the thought process that you're not someone who keeps promises to themselves, or you're not someone who does what you need to do. So when you make a list, keep it small and keep it to the point. Focus on the priority tasks that you need to get done. Do those things consistently. Over time, you may be able to add 1 or 2 things to the equation. But the longer the track record that you have of you doing what you set out to do in the first place, the more confidence that you're going to build, and hence the more consistent that you'll continue to be long into the future. Pre-workout, ? So I do take pre-workout. The one that I take at the moment is Optimum Nutrition Gold Standard, or I don't even know if it's Gold Standard. My favorite one that I've ever had has probably been Bring the Chaos. I think you can get it on HP Nutrition if you're someone who lives in Ireland. Do I notice any erectile dysfunction from taking finasteride or duosteroid? Can't remember. Yeah, so finasteride. No, I haven't, thank God, noticed any erectile dysfunction, but then again, I haven't taken finasteride in several months. To be honest, with these things, I don't think there's much to worry about. But I'm not a doctor, so why should you take my opinion on it? I was told by the professionals in the situation that it was safe. Maybe that's a naive stance to take, but personally for me, I just really don't read too much into these things. Big meals or multiple meals throughout the day for bulking. Because for me, I don't like the thought of having to eat at regular intervals, so I will do much better having just bigger meals less frequently throughout the day. So there's none that's more optimal. The overall goal that you should be looking to achieve is consuming the appropriate amount of calories. And whether the road to Rome for you is to have like 5 or 6 smaller meals throughout the day, a couple of snacks, well then that's the approach that you take. But if you're someone who just can't be arsed preparing food, having a large percentage of your day occupied about what meal you're going to consume next, well then maybe having the slightly bigger meals at less frequent intervals will be the best option. For me, I really don't derive that much pleasure from food aside from when I'm hungry. So like I'm fucking stoked with just having an 1800 calorie bulking shake like I've been for the last number of weeks. 150 grams of oats, 80 grams of peanut butter, a banana, blueberries, 2 scoops of protein powder, 400 or 500 milliliters of milk. Bob is your uncle, Mary is your aunt. So what do I do for work, and how did I start influencer stuff? As alluded to earlier, the influencer stuff started as a byproduct of me showing up every single day on social media, posting content that was valuable enough that many people deemed it appropriate to follow, to like, and to share with their friends. My work, my bread and butter, is the coaching that I do both on a one-to-one basis online, in which I check in with people every single week, as well as the low ticket option for those of you who don't quite need that level of intense, invasive one-to-one accountability, in which you can get meal programming, training programming, as well as ongoing support and access to a community of hundreds of others of people on the same journey as you. So basically, I'm an online coach. Will you be doing more food, nutrition content? Find the ones that I've done helpful. I will indeed be doing more food and nutrition content. Look, it's quite obvious that it has helped a lot of people. I think at this stage, the bulking hacks have got tens of millions of views online. So of course, anything doing those numbers, you will be seeing more of them. How to escape skinny fat when eating less makes your body want to hold on to everything. I think your name is Trevor. Unfortunately, Trevor, I'm going to be the bearer of bad news. Your body is quite simply not holding on to fat because you're eating too little. What's actually happening, Trevor, is unfortunately you think you're eating very little, but in actual fact, if you were to track your calories, you'd find out you're eating quite a lot. That's the reason that you're not losing body fat. If your body was to hold on to body fat, or was to even gain body fat as a byproduct of eating too little, well then we wouldn't have starvation in the world. The prescription, Trevor, you're trying to escape skinny fat, so assuming that you've got some body fat that you need to lose, is you need to whip out MyFitnessPal, you need to start logging the foods you genuinely consume. First you need to have that rude awakening, and then from there you need to find a way to adhere to the calories that you need to consistently lose fat over a couple of weeks. Shall we do push-pull workout or normal double day or single day workout? Please tell. Completely person dependent. If you wish to do push-pull legs because you can get to the gym 6 days a week, well then that's probably the best option for you. Or should you do a normal double day or single day workout? I don't really know what that means. Should you train twice a day or once per day? I think people who train twice a day probably have very little going on in their lives aside from going to the gym. That is not 99.9% of people, in fact. So I do in most cases recommend that someone trains solely once per day. Now, maybe there's a little bit of a language barrier here, or maybe you are in fact asking, should you do push-pull legs or should you do a bro split? And the answer to that question is do whatever one you prefer. Workout splits are not important. First, look at the amount of days in which you're able to get to the gym per week, and then from there, reverse engineer what split you're going to do. Do you enjoy just having one muscle group to focus on in a session? If you do, well then the bro split may be a fantastic option for you. Or do you like to get slightly more bang for your buck? Maybe do 2 or 3 muscle groups in a session, for which a push-pull leg split may be the best one for you. The lower the amount of sessions that you're doing per week, the more that you're going to gravitate towards splits that hit multiple body parts in a session. But the more often that you're in the gym per week, the more that you can gravitate towards splits that maybe only target 1/2 muscle groups per session. How to do a mini cut. So a mini cut is essentially just a cut, but over a much shorter time frame. So a mini cut is usually implemented when someone has bulked a little bit too hard and would just like to rein things in for maybe 3 or 4 weeks to bring their body fat back down to a level of which they can then take things a little bit steadier, a little bit slower, but in doing so, prolong the lifespan of a bulk. I did one most recently with a one-to-one client, and we put him in a fairly substantial deficit because we knew it was only going to be a 2 or 3 week period in which he was cutting body fat. He wanted to be as efficient as possible. He tidied things up, and then within 2 or 3 weeks, he was back into a bulking phase. What's my favorite band? Never been asked that before. I don't think I have a favorite band, but my favorite band back in the day used to be McFly. I used to mix up Busted songs with McFly. I think I just really liked the lead singer of McFly when I was younger for some reason. Training push-pull legs, push-pull. Should my push and pull sessions be the same both days? I mean, the structure of them should certainly be the same. Just for the sake of variation and keeping things interesting, maybe just try different variations for your rowing or your pull-down movements. But aside from that, the structure should remain the same. You know, you do have the flexibility to switch up and alternate certain exercises within that. How long have I been gymming? So I've been gymming for nearly 10 years. When should you start cutting? So you should start cutting when you want to start cutting, essentially. My best advice between me and you is that if you want to build the best possible physique with the most amount of muscle, you want to be looking back in 10 years' time at your lifting career, having spent the vast majority of that in a bulk. Muscle building, especially as a natural lifter, is a very, very slow process. So if 60% of the time you're cutting and 40% of the time you're bulking, guess what? You're probably going to look like a fucking scarecrow for the rest of your life. But if you can get yourself to a situation where 70, 80% of the time that you're bulking, you're getting stronger, you're packing muscle onto your frame, the other 30 or 20% of the time, you're simply just cutting to unveil the muscle that you've built, far more successful you're going to be in building a very impressive physique. So you should start cutting if you've got like a goal in mind, whether that's a holiday coming up, etc. Or quite simply, you've just gotten to a level of body fat that you are no longer comfortable with. Push-pull legs versus the bro split, which is best for natural people? It really doesn't matter whether you're natural or unnatural. The very same principles are going to remain the same. I go through phases where I like more of a bro split style approach to training, where I focus on 1, max 2 muscle groups in a session. But in other cases, such as right now, I'm kind of gravitating back towards a push-pull leg split. I think for most people, a push-pull leg split is probably the most sensible, but there's certainly situations in which a bro split would be more beneficial. For those of you who feel as though your concentration or your focus can lapse very quickly within a session, having just one muscle group to focus on in a session can improve the productivity or the efficiency of those particular workouts. If you have just chest to focus on in a session, the chances are you'll probably get it done in 30 or 40 minutes, which is reducing one barrier to getting to the gym, which is the time you need to spend in the gym. You'll probably be more locked in, and your execution of certain exercises, because it's the only thing that you need to train, may well just be that little bit better. But push-pull legs has the benefit of allowing you to hit multiple muscle groups more frequently. Not that that in and of itself is a reason to solely choose push-pull legs, but for some people, it may allow them just to distribute volume a little bit more effectively so that you don't have to get it done all in one workout. And the final question from the same individual is intensity or volume, what do I prefer doing? So I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, but it can't be one or the other. So both the volume and intensity have their roles as it pertains to building muscle. And if you have just one but not the other, you are going to unfortunately be leaving gains on the table. If you're not training at a high enough intensity, fat chance of you building a really impressive physique. So intensity is king, intensity builds density, and training within a very, very close proximity to failure, if not to failure, the vast majority of the time is in essence what is going to provide that stress, that stimulus to the muscle that's going to require it and force it to adapt recover and grow back stronger. Volume then has its role as it pertains to building muscle, and despite what the Mike Mentzer fanatics will say, it is an important element that you need to figure out if you are looking to optimize the muscle that you can build. The easiest way to find out what volume per body part is most appropriate for you is to number one, see if you are progressing on the amount of volume that you're doing, but assuming that you are progressing and getting stronger, consider your recovery post session. And what I mean by that is you should be feeling a little bit of tenderness, if not a little bit of soreness, for the immediate 1, 2, maybe even 3 days following a session. If you're feeling no soreness whatsoever and you're completely fresh, such that you could probably hit that same muscle group again, it's probably indicative that you could do a little bit of extra volume. So add in an extra couple of sets, maybe even an extra exercise. So essentially follow that same pattern for the length of time required so that you reach this sweet spot where you're both progressing consistently with the weights and with the exercises that you're performing, but also you're feeling just that little bit of tenderness, little bit of soreness for the following 1, 2, or even 3 days after a session. So do not let someone say that volume is not a factor, is not important for building muscle. It absolutely is, but it just so happens that intensity, if you were to compare the two, is more important. So thank you all for tuning into today's Q&A. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that wherever you are, you have a wonderful evening. If you haven't done so already, drop the video a like, and more importantly, make sure you tune in to the next one. Take care.